talk about Marathon. Apparently, Marathon is in trouble now. Wow, shocker. Believe it or not. Surprise Pikachu face? Speaking of which, actually, how is like Marathon even doing right now? Damn. Damn. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. Wow. It is struggling to keep a player base. I never see that coming. Yeah, I never did either. Wow. As long as the corset doesn't change your 43-inch thighs. Okay, buddy. All right. Okay. All right, buddy. Okay. All right. Anyways,
It has been
let's see
2
what's
months
going on.
since the launch of Marathon, and look, I'm just going to call it right now. I have zero hope that Marathon will recover. I'm going to call it and say that Marathon is going to be a dead life service in the not so distant future. The numbers just don't hold up by the standards of a AAA game like Marathon and by the standards of executives from Sony
Marathon is
and
dead.
PlayStation, who I'll remind you spent $3.6 billion acquiring Bungie with, you know, an expectation of a return on investment. The numbers that we're seeing...
Oh yeah, Dubstep. Remember when I told you that one person was crashing out in that comment section or so? They commented like at least like what 17 times throughout the video. And I told them that like the amount of money that they put in equates to 100 million, and they only made this much amount or so in this certain time frame. It means it's a flop. Okay, all right, that's what it means. Okay, it took them 1 month or so to reach a certain threshold in millions of copies being sold. Okay, and also at the same time, this person had a problem of me looking up stuff literally on Google and said, "You doing research? You didn't do research. All you did was typed in Google and looked up stuff." And I'm like, that's what research is about. What are you talking about? You look up stuff to verify the claim.
From Marathon are simply not viable for how expensive this game was to make.
Isn't that
how
right,
it needs to continuously, recurrently monetize to continue making new content for the game that will allow it to maintain.
I've been saying Sony could be upset with Bungie for the longest. I think to be honest, I think Sony regretted buying Bungie, to be honest. I really do.
Dwindling player base. The math just isn't mathing for Marathon.
No idea,
it was troubling enough that we found out that Marathon has sold roughly 1.2 million copies across all platforms as of late March of 2026, which, again, by the standard of AAA games under the purview of Sony and PlayStation, who have incredibly high expectations for a live services performance, 1.2 million copies, $40 per copy, alongside the revenue cut that they have to give away outside of the PlayStation platform. All of that culminates...
He's right. The real research is going into Bungie HQ and ask them how is their day. No. This guy was crashing out on the video about how right-wing grifters are ruining video games. He was literally crashing out in that video specifically and saying that like, you doing research doesn't mean anything. What do you mean that Ghost of Yote is a flop or so? They sold quite a lot of units or so. When you're looking at it in the business standpoint, in the suits, the amount that they made or so in that month or so compared to all the other games that announced how much they made in 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, 1 week or so, it says a lot more. How is that related? Because literally people told me that specifically for Marathon, told me that like Marathon is actually good or so. I don't know what you're talking about or so. There were some people that were like literally saying that like, you don't know anything or anything like that. You know, you haven't done your research. And it's the same. It's literally, it connects to the same topic or so, where these people are like saying, you don't do research, you don't know what you're talking about or anything like that. So I'm like, the fuck do you mean? Like we sometimes look at some of this shit in real life, to be honest. Don't you see the VOD? And that's all I gotta say. That's all I have to say on that, because I'm just kind of like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, we literally look at everything on the stream or so just to make sure, to verify things. I feel like those guys are the equivalent of Sims. I just have no idea, to be honest. These people like always crash out on me for no apparent reason. It's pretty funny to read the comments, though. I'll be honest with you. I only replied to one of his comments or so about that specific VOD, about the guy like hating on me about the ghost of about like right wingers are ruining video games and everything, right? And I literally gave him the response or so about like how Ghost of Yote is a flop or so because it didn't sold very well. And he was like, no, what do you mean? What are you talking about? It did sold very well. I gave him a small paragraph of the reason why it is very unsuccessful. I told him, when you're looking at it in the business suit standpoint of perspective or so, and it only made this much in a month, and you look at all the other game releases that released their numbers or so, when they say, we sold the game in 1 day. This is how much we sold in 1 day. This is how much we sold in 3 days. This is how much we sold in 1 week. This is how much we sold in 1 month. You can tell the difference or so, which ones made money and which one did not make money.
Into a revenue that's
all I gotta say.
Nowhere close to making up for the hundreds of millions that Marathon cost to build on the part of Bungie. And according to recent reports, the budget of Marathon was around $250 million. And that's conservative because there's still ongoing costs surrounding this live service. And in my video here, I actually did some calculations that highlighted that if we take into account the $40 cost for the game and multiply by the number of copies sold and take into account the revenue cut that platforms receive outside of PlayStation, and even assume that every single one of those 1.2 million players, say, spent like $50 in microtransactions, even then, we only get, kind of close to $80 million in revenue from all facets of Marathon.
That is still enough. That is still not enough or so for them to even break even on the game itself and the cost of how much it is. So people who are literally saying that the game is not a flop or so, what do you mean it sold this many copies? When you do the fucking math itself, you can tell they did not make their money back. Marathon was doomed from the beginning when they decided to make it so damn fugly. Like I like the artistic vision. It would have been better if it was a single player game, if they did like a Marathon like reboot kind of type of thing or so, but they didn't. They decided to make an extraction shooter. Oh, them skins in the game are ass. Is it really that bad? Are their skins really that bad? Is it really that bad? I haven't seen any of their skins whatsoever. There isn't many games that I have bought full price. Yeah, that too as well, because usually people buy these games on a discount or so. My question is like, has Marathon been on a discount yet by any chance? And when will they be on a discount? Probably their next big update, they'll probably do like, or maybe their next wipe or something. Maybe they'll probably put it on a discount. I wouldn't be surprised if they do or not. And even then, the cool, like, weird trippiness of it would have been so much cooler as a single player game instead of a multiplayer game. I'm like, it would caught less flack or so. Like, yeah, it would look ugly or so, but if the story is good or so, because at the end of the day, I hear that people tell me before, right, in the past or so, that Bungie, when they used to work on the Halo games, they were the ones that make like really good stories. They make good fucking stories. And I'm just like, I'm still waiting for the good story. I'm like, I played Destiny. I didn't play any of the Halo games because the reason why is because I didn't own an Xbox during that time. I was a Sony person, I was a Sony girl instead of an Xbox girl. And I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the story to come out. There hasn't been a single story that came out from them. All they do is just live service multiplayer games that literally have like zero story relevancy, So far, the game has only got like a 20% discount. I see.
Which comes nowhere close to breaking even on the reported $250 million budget. That, again, is conservative. But beyond raw sales, it's more the trend of the player base that truly indicates the status of a live service and its long-term viability. And with Marathon, while for some time it retained a decent player base, the trend was always downwards, and that trend has continued even 2 months after.
Oh, Marathon could have done a cool TV show with its current look. People did like the cinematic trailer. I will be honest with you, the cinematic trailer was pretty cool. It would have been cool if they did like the like a cinematic short or so, on that one Netflix adaptation or so. What is it? Love, Robot, something, whatever it's called. They could have done something like that. It would have been at least a bit more cooler, in my personal opinion, but that's just me, anyways.
Release. And now we're at a point where the game is starting to delve into dangerous territory when it comes to Steam concurrent player numbers. We're getting to a point now where player numbers are starting to dip below 10,000 players, while 24-hour peaks are still in the mid to high 10,000s. As this downwards trend continues,
yeah, I love Death and Robots.
I do believe that we're about to delve into the quadruple digit numbers, and with no signs indicating that this downwards trend can be mitigated and be turned around into an upswing.
I don't know, they could have definitely done like this specific style of a game or so in a single player game, but like have it very like dystopian futuristic type of thing or so, cyberpunk-ish. You know, use these shells as like they transfer your cognitive thoughts into these modifiers or so, but then you're like an assassin or so, but you use these things as like, you know, as like the runner shells and everything like that, as like assassin bots or so, and then you have to find out who's the actual controller behind the bot itself, and then you have to eliminate them and whatnot. Like they could have done something like that where you have to target like other people specifically. Well, actually, to be honest, I think I had something similar to this, but like I'm using part of my story that I created or so to do marathon shit, right? Because the part of my story or so was more of it's a futuristic dystopian kind of mixture with Tron or so. You know how like the Tron had like the bodysuits and everything like that? That's basically is what I did, where the business guys can like they run basically like most of like it's corrupted or so, and usually the top people are the business guys and everything, and they have these as hired assassins or so, where basically they try to use these assassins to kill off the other businessmen without letting them know that they were the ones that killed them specifically. So they hire these mercenaries to do it. Basically that's what I was trying to use towards the story for Marathon. They could have used these like shell runners specifically, like have somebody actually controlling them and whatnot, and you have to do the same thing to that sort of nature, but you have to find the actual person of the source of the actual runner shell, and you have to eliminate them in real life, you know? So I'm just saying.
This continues, while Marathon certainly will last significantly longer than the likes of Concord and Highguard and whatnot, I think the end result in the near to mid-term will be that Marathon will ultimately not survive. While Marathon was a valiant attempt on the part of Bungie to tackle the extraction shooter genre, and while Marathon was overall positively received during its peak golden times, ultimately players are starting to lose interest in this game. And I've been contemplating more and more how different things could have been if Marathon had stuck to the guns that Bungie is really known for, which is combining that, best-in-class first-person shooter gameplay that Bungie has mastered with the kind of storytelling and scale of set pieces.
What did I say? Like I said, I don't know why, but I have this internal feeling or so that I want to take pieces, take the stuff that failed, right? What's the name of that one video game from Square Enix about that black girl or so getting isekai to another fantasy world and finding out that her parents or her mom or so was part of this kingdom or so? I forgot what the fuck the name of that thing is called. I just want to take these really bad IPs and send them over to Forsaken, or whatever it's called or so. I want to take the Marathon, not the IP itself, but take the inspiration from it. Forspoken, there you go, Forspoken. I just want to get inspiration from these things, take pieces from it, right? And just make a copy of it, but not exactly a one-to-one, but get inspired from them, but actually do good with the actual storytelling and everything like that. I'm just saying, I'd rather personally do stuff like that, and instead of doing the marathon, doing the marathon Bungie thing, right? Instead of doing it as an extraction shooter, I would turn it into an FPS game instead, Even the name is forgettable. Yeah, I don't remember the name.
and just a sense of providing a more campaign-like experience akin to what Halo
I don't
and
know why. I
even
just have this
Destiny
tendency
did.
of wanting
How
to do
if
it.
they had gone
you know?
that route with Marathon instead of an extraction shooter,
I don't know. I'm just a
things might have
creative
turned out
person
very
that just,
different.
you know,
Like there's so
that just
much
wants to
cool
create
material
things. Who
to
knows,
work
maybe one
with
day,
when it comes to
when I own my own gaming
Marathon and its
studio.
lore and its world building and what they can draw from, you know, the old Marathon games that preceded even Halo. How they could have turned that into like this cinematic, epic, narrative-driven campaign experience with also multiplayer components and, you know, taking learnings from Halo campaigns with Destiny live service aspects and combine those.
Maybe
Like,
'cause it's
I'm
hot.
imagining that scenario and how much more Marathon could have thrived if it hadn't tackled
I had the money to buy the
niche
IP, though,
genre of
to be honest.
extraction shooters and made it so hardcore that it cannot touch the likes of like Arc Raiders. If it had been more of like an open world, first person shooter campaign live service experience, like man, the potential of that I think would have been immense.
If I had
now, on
money
the
or so, I
topic
would
of
totally
open world
buy,
games,
you know?
one that offers a really fun take on it is free-to-play title NTE, which blends urban open world with anime aesthetics.
Anyways.
Check out NTE for free. All right, so back to Marathon. Let's look at additional numbers that highlight just how much worse Marathon is doing compared to competing live services. I bring up Arc Raiders yet again because, sure, while its numbers are not at the high level they were at its
really
peak,
good,
its numbers at least still retain a level of decent concurrent player base.
I'm like for the nighttime, you know, when people are going to sleep or so, it's 50K, and then when people are on, you know, for 24 hours or so, you know, it's 107. When, you know, when the other side wakes up or so, you know, you get back to the double digit, well, technically triple digits still, but
that still highlights a healthy live service. 24-hour peaks that still go above 100,000 concurrent players, that's a great sign. And keep in mind that Arc Raiders came out before Marathon did, so you would expect that Arc Raiders would be dying off and that Marathon would be in a better place because it's a newer, shinier game. But the fact that Arc Raiders has been out longer and is still significantly more popular and has significantly retained more players than the newer, shinier Marathon has, like, that tells you everything.
But at the same time, when it comes to Marathon and Arc Raiders, Marathon is a lot more hardcore, so you're already alienating a lot of the player base who play more casually. That's why Arc Raiders is more popular, so because it's more casual. And even though they did a lot of things that were right and correct compared to Marathon, well, Marathon decided to, you know, copy, you know, a certain artist, you know. And also on top of that, they also didn't want to bring in voice chat because they didn't want toxic player base to be in like the they didn't want the toxicity thing, you know. Any plans to play the Black Flags Resync? Yeah, I'll definitely play it because it's in like literally in the middle of summer, and usually middle of summer is usually pretty dead, so.
There's Twitch viewership. I think that's a pretty important stat because it highlights just how many content creators are actually streaming this game, how many people are actually interested in spotlighting this title and playing it for the masses to see, which could potentially draw new eyes to Marathon or get new people interested in Marathon. I mean, the state of affairs on Twitch for Marathon is incredibly sad.
That's pretty sad.
With live viewers sitting in, you know, the 2,500s, average viewers also sitting in the 2,500s. The live channels that stream this game are minuscule now compared to its launch. This is a game that content creators are moving on from, and in turn, that means that a lot of audience members will be moving on as well. So what exactly is causing Marathon's steady departure of players? Well, a key contributing component is the fact that Marathon is a very quote-unquote sweaty kind of extraction shooter, whereas Arc Raiders is something whose appeal you can understand kind of immediately. Marathon has a rather steep learning curve, and so that makes it very difficult for the general public to get into this game. But even for hardcore players, they're experiencing certain issues that's making Marathon less appealing.
Cheaters?
So, for example, there's a major issue right now when it comes to balancing, where the game allows for things like spamming grenades, as well as certain weapons like the Ares, being able to one-shot players no matter how rare or how good their gear is, making for very...
Wow, that sounds so AIDS. That is something I don't ever want to play ever. A one-shot weapon, doesn't matter what level your armor is or your gear is, you'll still get one-shotted. That's I feel like they're like making like this game or so to be like Destiny, like Destiny 3 or something, you know?
Like cheap feeling matches now. Bungie have heard complaints about this and they are working on this, but I mean, when the people who are sticking around for this game are the most hardcore players, and these are the players who are being afflicted by these kinds of massive balancing issues, I mean, this couldn't have come at a worse time. And then Marathon's inability to appeal to more casual gamers, and not even just casual, even like veteran gamers who don't have the time or the patience to learn all of the intricacies that Marathon has to offer as a live service. This is an aspect
this is the problem when you cater to the 1% of the player base. Is the hardcore, is like the super hardcore people. I'm like, those guys are just going to be playing or so the hardcore way or so, but the majority of the players are going to be casuals and new people at the end of the day. Because number one, you're playing an you're making an extraction shooter, right? You're already alienating a good chunk of the gaming sphere, right? The gaming sphere to begin with, right? You make an extraction shooter. All right, you just lost like 50%, right? You got 50% of the player base who are playing extraction shooters, right? Just for hypothetical, right? On top of that, you're also competing with other extraction shooter games in that specific subcategory, right? On top of that, you make your game hardcore. And then from there on forward, you have these controversies that came up or so, and then the game design, well, the artistic style anyways, doesn't look very appealing. You lose a couple, let's say like 5% or so, 5% of that player base, right? You gotta also bring those players over to come play and stay longer, but the question is, what makes you different and what brings you to the table or so to change from Tarkov, from, you know, this other one. A BR mode with Marathon, that is a desperate move. Marathon is testing a battle royale-ish mode and offering to casuals. This game is dying, to be honest. This game is definitely dying if they're actually making a... I didn't even notice they were trying to make a BR for this game. Jesus Christ. Okay, all right. Well then, that's going to alienate even more of the player base, because at the end of the day, I'm like, BR people, you know, are not really there anymore because they're busy playing their other games. The question is like, how are you going to pull them in when they don't like the art style, they don't like the UI, they don't like that one difficult, intricate map that just came out recently, which is the ice one or so. They don't like the hardcore player base to begin with. So you're already losing so many, like, player by player. It's like slowly bleeding the player. Plus also you have balancing issues, you also have hackers on top of that, and then you also have my question is, when it reaches to the wiping or so, when it wipes your stats, and not your stats, but like basically your shit, everything like that, and you have to redo everything, my question is, are they gonna redo all of it? The question is, which player base, like which hardcore player base is gonna do it the more, you know? Is it the 1% or is it the 0.5%?
Even Bungie is aware of, hence the proposal on the part of game director Joe Ziegler to introduce certain modes that will hopefully allow more casual leaning or even veteran gamers who can't quite grasp Marathon to get into this game. So for example, there's this potential introduction of an idea called Dire Marsh Sponsored, which is a mode that would happen in specifically the Dire Marsh map, where instead of the typical extraction shooter format, instead of having gear that you extract that you then equip before diving into a match,
I can't believe
there's a mode where all players would collect gear as you go and face off against other teams who are starting at the same point. So having everyone enter the map basically at an even playing field, and then find gear along the way and then engage in matches that will eventually result in a victor. And if that sounds familiar to you, is because this format is very much akin to, as Forbes highlights here, a battle royale, with obvious parallels to specifically Apex Legends, which is more like hero-based and squad and team-based, while Marathon's version of a battle royale would be different from something like Apex Legends in the sense that Marathon has lots of AI enemies, which isn't the case for traditional battle royales. There's no storm circle, no need to be the last team standing to win or extract. While there are certain key differences, ultimately, the overall functionality of this mode is very similar to a battle royale, and it very much steps away from the core identity of this game, which is supposed to be an extraction shooter. Now, this being a separate mode, it would be optional, but if we're at a point where developers are thinking about a mode that is very similar to Battle Royale to try to draw players in, that to me smells like desperation. There's this very clear desire to make extreme pivots in order to salvage what is very much a dying live service. They know that the core game of Marathon, this thing that they've spent so much money and so many years building, is ultimately not appealing enough, especially in this competitive market where live services are more prominent than ever, where the market is more saturated than ever, and where you as a competitor, even if you're Bungie, have to stand out more than ever because of the sheer amount of time and money and like learnings that you're expecting from players.
At the end of the day, you are competing with other live service, but even then on top of that, you're also competing in that specific subgenre, which is if they're gonna make a battle royale, they have to be competing with the other battle royales that are in that specific category as well. The same thing for the extraction shooter, it has to compete with the other extraction shooters that are in the game. At this point, it doesn't even have an identity if it's gonna do this. Fortnite has AI bosses in the game, so not new. Well then, there you go. But doesn't technically Arc Raiders have the same thing too with their like AI like robots and stuff like that? Arc Raiders has optional resets. You can participate in every month. Reset to earn an extra 5 skill point. And cosmetic. Ah, I see.
So many live services out there, but people can only really attach themselves to one or two, and that's as much bandwidth as they'll have because of the high requirements as far as money and time is concerned that live services are associated with. I, for one, think that this Dire Marsh sponsored mode will come nowhere close to enough to be able to revitalize the player base of Marathon. It might bring some players in. You might see an uptick in Steam concurrent players, but this is not going to be the thing that will save the game, that will turn things around, that will make Marathon such a radically different game that appeals to the masses beyond the extremely hardcore players that, you know, Marathon suddenly has a chance to live for many, many more years to come as a live service. Because ultimately, it's too much of a trend-chasing mode. It doesn't do anything that truly stands out, that makes it a must-play compared to other games in the genres that this game aims to tackle that have had all this time to develop and become the flagship version of that.
Instead of wasting all that resources to making a battle royale, they should have done like a PvE story type of thing instead. I'm just saying. You want to make all this lore and shit like that for the game? Put that resource from that shit into the actual story mode, and there you go.
Genre that people gravitate towards if they want to play.
Have it like being like an episodic episode update type of thing or so, and then you should be okay. Like you know, like how they did it or so specifically for Concord. Do something like that, but actually have a playable semi-episodic episode type of thing. Then you'll have some people be playing it. I'm just saying. Seriously, how many games has it been that tried the BR model and still die? Have they not learned the lesson of those failures? I'm like, take a look at Splitgate. What happened to them? You know. I'm just saying. Marathon AI enemies need a shit ton of ammo to kill. For some fuck-ass reason, the cloak enemies are tanky atop of being fast, and the heavy enemies' energy shield recharges fast before you can deal any damage to it. I don't think being hardcore is a bad thing, but the current last map is like a Destiny raid. In Destiny, a good chunk of the player base don't play the raids. It's the same with the last map. Well, that's the thing, or so it's like. The player base is so small, you know, like I'm saying, like there's no, you know, it's the problem is you don't want to cater to hardcore fans because at the end of the day, you're trying to get the most money. So if you bring in the casual fans that come in and play and spend money or so and stay around to spend even more money, that's the kind of player base you want to grab at the end of the day, because those are the ones that are going to be spending the most money, while the hardcore players are going to be doing the hardcore content. You know, like you can balance it out and have hardcore content for the hardcore players. But you got to remember, at the end of the day, most of the player base is going to be the casuals that are going to be spending the most money.
That specific type of game, whether it's like Arc Raiders for extraction shooters or Apex Legends or Fortnite for Battle Royale, Marathon just has too much of a learning curve. And while it does do things very competently, it doesn't stand out so much within the genre that it's tackling that it's enough to detract people away from the less hardcore versions of the genre. Even the most veteran of live service game players, including journalists like Paul Tassi and Gene Park, are coming out and talking about how ultimately it feels like Marathon was the wrong kind of game for Bungie to make. Feels like such a departure from what Bungie is traditionally known for. When you look at the Halo franchise or the Destiny franchise, and then you look at Marathon and compare that to Halo and Destiny.
It's like the ugly red stepchild.
You know, it just feels like something got lost in transition, where Marathon feels more like a game mode than the fully fleshed out experiences that the likes of Halo and Destiny ended up being.
I'll be honest with you, I personally think extraction shooter games just feel like a game mode. Like it's like it just really just feels like a game mode itself, you know? Like it doesn't really feel like it's a full complete game. It just feels like you're buying it for like one game mode and one game mode only. That's it. That's just me, though.
Feeling like the worlds were fully realized. There was like a whole lot of narrative infused in them, a lot of cinematic set pieces, and a lot of great action gameplay moments that made those games feel more than just game modes, but rather fully fleshed out experiences with many facets to be engaged by. Marathon is just an extraction shooter first, and then in terms of narrative and world building and all these things, it happens in a very like ARG kind of way, or it happens through snippets of dialogue that are unlocked in the main menu as you fulfill contracts, but it's not the most engaging way to dole out narrative. Marathon is just lacking the handcraftedness that Halo and Destiny had when it comes to like the kind of content you experience, the narrative that you experience, and the melding of those two elements that kept so many people invested in those universes.
I keep hearing
it like does not resemble the original Marathon at all. The original Marathon had that handcraftedness. People wish that the modern Marathon would have harkened back to those games. Marathon as an extraction shooter just feels like it's Marathon just in name rather than in the substance and the kind of game people expect from the Marathon IP for those who were there back when Marathon first launched. And that's something that Paul Tassi, who again is a major player of live service games and someone who's been a Bungie fan for many years, talks about in his video. And even Gene Park kind of gives his take on Marathon and how, as valiant an effort as this game is, it's ultimately a game that, quote, I don't want to play. I replay Halo Infinite to get my modern Marathon fix. Bungie simply doesn't make games for me anymore. And Gene Park is also someone who is all in on live services, who enjoys them tremendously. And for some reason, Marathon is just not quite clicking with him. While nobody's saying it's a bad game, it's not a game that has the kind of longevity that these other live services, especially Bungie's past endeavors, have had. And sure, there's upcoming content like a new runner shell. There are new maps coming, new guns, new...
Yeah, but the problem is with this specific roadmap. Let me see here. Where is it at? You don't get a new runner, right? Which is a new shell, a new playable character, until season 2. When the fuck is season 2? Is it all the way? It's all the way until June. This game came out in March. There's a huge time difference between from there to there, When do you get let's see, when did you guys get a new gun? It was in, like, it looks like in the first season was that in March, you got a new gun. When do you get a new gun? You don't get it until June. You don't get a new gun until June. You don't get a new shell until June. Unlike, even the content is a little bit more slower, to be honest.
Mods, new cores, whatever, new contracts, new threats, so on and so forth. But, that's just like adding padding to an experience whose fundamentals are what's not ultimately appealing to people, or that is able to retain people for the long term, that has people ultimately going, well, that was fun while it lasted, but now I'm just going to move on to something else. And then with this mandatory seasonal wipe coming in that resets everything, like, I don't know how players are going to take that. While a lot of hardcore players know that this is kind of how extraction shooters work, something like Arc Raiders has more of an optional element of seasonal wipes rather than something that's mandatory, on top of it being something that, as an extraction shooter, just has more of an appeal for the masses. It's just a simpler kind of extraction shooter and a more easy to understand extraction shooter to get into. So beyond this downwards trend in not only concurrent players, but also just general buzz surrounding this game, like people just have stopped talking about Marathon, you've got all of these hurdles that this game is facing that does not do it any favors. Issues that hardcore players are facing, and obstacles and roadblocks and just uphill climbs that casual players are simply not willing to go through, unless like whatever new content and modes they introduce to Marathon down the line are so drastically fun and interesting and unique and experimental and just stand out from the live service pack that it makes players curious enough to check it out. And only then can Marathon have the potential to have any kind of comeback. But that's just so incredibly difficult. Those occurrences are rare, not impossible, but very rare. And it's a matter of how much patience does Sony and PlayStation and its executive leadership have, with Marathon having to recurrently spend money to maintain the servers and also to produce new content while not selling enough copies of the base game to make up for the amount of money spent on, developing this game and continuing to spend money on this game. And also its microtransactions not feeling substantial enough to feel like its monetization system is making up for the costs associated with this title.
Dubstep told me that the skins aren't looking that great, to be honest, so...
How much patience does Sony and PlayStation have? How much runway are they willing to give Marathon? How much more money are they willing to burn on this in the hopes that the investment eventually in the long term pays off? And, they're assessing what if we, by putting more money into Marathon, that's ultimately a gamble that will not pay off and we'll just end up losing more money down the line. What if it's better to just cut the cord on Marathon and have Bungie go back to making what they are most known for, which is Destiny or something akin to it?
They're never gonna do that. Nope. I think what they'll probably do is probably absorb Bungie into Sony, to be honest. I think that's what they're gonna do. Make them look like Warframe current skins, and it will sell. They won't do that. They will not. They will literally not make sexy looking characters. You're talking to like Western devs at the end of the day, so that is like out of the notion. That is like out the window. Never
Mind
happening.
you that Sony invested $3.6 billion in Bungie, and so there is a lot of scrutiny on Bungie to deliver. And looking at Marathon's numbers here, as good of a time as the players who are sticking around for Marathon may be having with this title, as tight as the first-person shooter gameplay might be, and as valiant an effort as this game might have been, these numbers right here, 1.2 million copies sold, and now, dipping into less than 10,000 concurrent players as this trend continues to go downwards, these numbers do not reflect a kind of live service that executives would have patience with for many, many years to come.
Especially not
this
the
feels like
nope.
If Marathon doesn't turn things around in the next few months, then this is another live service that will end up in the grave, and sooner rather than later. It might be months before we hear such an announcement. Hell, it might be a year or two, but I do think that
it's gonna die.
The writing might be on the wall for Marathon, unless there's something truly drastic that is being worked on behind the scenes that I don't know about that will shock the
I don't
world.
know about that one, to be honest.
This is just not viable. It's simply not. Like
remember they had that one speech or so where they had like some kind of like announcement interview or whatever, where that bald-headed guy literally said, always under-deliver, never over-deliver. So no, it's also, they did change their slogan too at Destiny, so for a fact it's not the same Destiny dev team anymore. If you had to change your slogan of what you used to be, that the studio itself is dead and it's just a hollow shell of itself.
Realistic, mathematical, financial standpoint, and when you look at the history of how companies like Sony and PlayStation operate, this is just not something that investors would be pleased by. The state of Marathon is plain and simply incredibly grim. 2 months after launch, I hoped to see any signs of, things have stabilized or things are on the upswing. But the downwards trend continues and it shows no signs of stopping. I've covered these kinds of trends before, and every single time, without fail, we eventually saw the announcement of this live service will close. So I think that's where Marathon is headed, as sad as it might be to say for those who are and have been enjoying Marathon. But that's my take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Marathon in the comments below.
That is the end of
and
that,
to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
Yeah, so it's not very surprising to me at the end of the day. What do you expect, you know? So it's like, and like the writing is on the wall at the end of the day. So what do you expect? Like I said, I know some of these games. I've been playing games for quite a long time or so. I know what, like, when a game is actually pretty good and pretty not good, okay? All right? And those people who always been like criticizing me and calling me a hater and stuff like that, honey, I have more years than you have more years in your daddy's ball sack, okay? All right? That's all I gotta say. I was there before you even were made. It will not be missed. It's a marathon that got turned into a sprint. It didn't even sprint. It crawled and flopped over like a fish. That's all I gotta say, you know? And like, there's just some people who can't really face the reality or so. When you look at like actual like logistics and just look at it logically, you're just kind of like, huh, you might be right or so. They're just so blinded. They're like so blinded or so because they love this game in general, but it's just kind of like, brother, it's not doing very well. Like it's not doing great. But call you a hater, you be hating on me. I hate your mama. That's what I'm gonna be doing in a second. But yeah, like I said, I'm like, what do you expect? What do you expect at the end of the day? And it's just the end of like even at this point, you want to know something? Here, you want to know something? So I made one video specifically criticizing on this one video overall. Let me see. Let's bring up our boy. Let's bring up our boy Aztec Cross. When was the last time that he played Marathon? Like actually just played it. This one's here, but he played 2, but I want him to just play just Marathon. Only Marathon. There you go. 3 weeks ago. It was 3 weeks ago he played Marathon. Man has been playing Destiny 1. That's crazy. That nostalgia classic is hitting him harder than the fucking fentanyl that is hitting those people in California, to be honest. That is wild to see that. But like I said, 13 weeks ago, just Marathon itself, 13 weeks ago. That's what he played. And I'm just saying, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, I love the guy. I love Aztec Cross. Don't get me wrong or so. But he was glazing the shit out of like and defending it. And I'm like, brother, it's okay. I would pat him on the back and be like, Aztec Cross, it's not it. This is not it, okay? It's just not it. You deserve better. I get it, man. You want this game to succeed. You want your content to flourish and everything like that. I get it. I understand, bro. You want that money so badly. But brother, keep your integrity up, okay? I think people will like you a lot more and watch your content a lot more if your integrity and your morals are high. Don't ever drop your morals, okay, man? It's okay to shit on it, okay? It's alright. It's not that good. It's okay. I get it, okay? Don't worry. I understand. Don't trust me. I love Call of Duty. I would love Call of Duty to get back to its good days. But I know for a fact, it's just not good anymore. That's all it is to it. You just gotta let it go, man. Just let it go, bro. It's okay. But yeah, anyways. That's about it, though. Like, don't get me wrong. I love Aztec Cross. I love him. But, like, man, dude. Sometimes you just gotta look at him and be like, brother, what are you doing, brother? I'm like, I don't know how old Aztec Cross is, but he should be knowing how video games is. Drop your morals for your Oshi. Your mama is my Oshi. Anyways, I dropped the morals for that one. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Honestly, it's kind of funny how he's already basically has moved on from Marathon. He's basically done with Marathon. I think the contract is over with him. Funny enough, Marathon was what got me into extraction shooters, but I had to debate between Marathon or Arc Raiders during Marathon's server test slam. Let me guess, do you enjoy Arc Raiders a little bit more than Marathon, I assume? Yeah. Anyways, that's the end of the video. And hopefully one day he'll let it go. But he probably won't, because the nostalgia glass has hit him harder than anything in the world. And peace. A lot more.